It's happening again. The same issues from last year are also the problems this year. And look, after a controversial offseason and lack of acquisitions, Devil fans now have the right to start asking questions. Welcome in to Devil's Digest. Glad that you guys are here today. And as we sit here today, I think we can all agree we're in a rough spot. Devils have dropped to 6th in the division. They're out of a wild card spot, and they've lost their past 5 games, shut out in 2 of them, 4-game losing streak at home, and all in regulation. All 5 games in regulation. And look, when things start going wrong, and we saw, how this season started. Obviously, we had an 8-game win streak. Things felt good, and now all of a sudden it feels like things are going completely off the table. I mean, you look at where New Jersey was a week ago. They were first in the Metropolitan, first in the Eastern Conference, and now things have kind of gone a little bit the wrong way. 5-game losing streak. Look, it can happen quick. And with New Jersey and seeing that, you can just go and say, this is just a slump right now. New Jersey's fine. It's a slump. They'll be okay. But you look back to last season, and you saw last season when December, Devils flying high. Look, they felt like the best team in the conference. You really kind of felt like they could win a Stanley Cup this year. They were contending. Team looked good. The new acquisitions looked good. Everything was looking good. Team was flying high. Then things started to go wrong. Injuries happened. Devils weren't getting the same type of play out of their stars. Things started to go wrong. A lot of things didn't go right, I could say, from January on. So when things started to go wrong for New Jersey, what did they do? Well, not much. Look, Tom Fitzgerald goes in that trade deadline, and he goes and he gets guys like Cody Glass and Daniel Sprong. And Cody Glass looks good right now for New Jersey, but I don't think that was, his intentions if you asked him back in December. I don't think he was saying, at trade deadline day, I'm going to go out and I'm going to get, a fourth line center trade, not a ton for him, and then go get Daniel Sprong, who really didn't even play for the Devils. So when you looked at what Tom Fitzgerald was going to do and what he wound up doing at the trade deadline, because it felt like it was already kind of too late with how, the injuries were happening and how the team was playing, they didn't go big fish hunting. They didn't go out and get, a star, which maybe you kind of thought they might go out and do. So when something like that happened, you went into the offseason and you said to yourself, okay, well, you know what? We need to be a little bit different. We need to have a different type of roster, make some tweaks. And I don't think there's a ton of tweaks yet to make, but you saw from December on that there were tweaks that had to be made. And in this offseason, what does he go out and do? Well, he goes and he gets depth players in Connor Brown and Evgeny Dodonov. But the major problem with the depth last year was the center group. Look, you look at their centers last year. They didn't find a third-line center all year long. All year long, they couldn't fix their third-line center. They couldn't find it, internally. They couldn't do it externally. And they didn't do it all year. And what do they do in the offseason? They don't address it. And what are we seeing this year? That's an issue. We're seeing their bottom 2 centers, that be a problem. And, I can go on here and say, Cody Glass, he looked good. He's had injuries. But, he does yet to have an assist so far this year. And he's playing third-line center, and he gets paid to be a fourth-line center. And that's what he's been in his career. And I think, look, I like Cody Glass. I just want him as my fourth-line center. That's where he should be playing. He's a good fourth-line center, but when you put him in third-line center, that's different matchups. Looks a little bit different. Different things you have to take care of. And now Cody Glass, yes. Do I think he's a good player? Yes. But a fourth-line center, I think, is a better role for him. And then you go, where are you going to go with your fourth-line center? All right, if you're going to go a little bit maybe cheaper at your third line, you definitely can go with a PTO at your fourth-line center. You can't go with a PTO player as your fourth-line center and a guy who's been a fourth-line center his whole entire career and put him at third line. When you had an issue with it last season. You saw last year going into the playoffs, they couldn't really figure out their centers. It was, obviously Nico, Hischier, Dawson, Mercer, maybe had to go play there a little bit. Cody Glass was all around the lineup. They couldn't figure it out. And this year, when we see Jack Hughes get injured, what happens? Well, Devils can't figure it out. Devils are struggling to score. They've got 7 goals in their last 5 games. Look, the injuries and one player coming in the lineup can hurt you, but it shouldn't hurt you to the extent where your whole entire team changes. And your whole entire team has completely changed and changed quick. It's not like this has been, a 3-month thing and, they had one rough stretch in 3 months. No, it hasn't. It's been a month, and you're seeing the Devils going from first in the Eastern Conference to out of a playoff spot. They did that pretty quickly. So when you're seeing things come about and things happening earlier, and you have to plan for it, and you've seen in the past them not being planned for, you definitely do have to wonder, what is Tom Fitzgerald thinking? Because, the Devils this offseason definitely had needs, and I don't think Tom Fitzgerald necessarily addressed that. Look, I was very crucial during the offseason saying they have to get a third line center, they need another top six winger. And Tom Fitzgerald didn't really do any of that. And what's struggling to score this year? Their depth. Paul Cotter hasn't had a great year. Stefan Nason hasn't had a great year. Third, fourth line center, look, they're playing out of position. And Tom Fitzgerald went in this offseason and went, you know what? This is what we're going to do. We're going to get guys like Connor Brown and Giddy Dodonov, and it's going to work. Our depth is going to look a lot better. Look, Connor Brown's been great. If Giddy Dodonov, he can't stay in the lineup. And that's kind of more unfortunate for Giddy Dodonov not being able to stay in the lineup, but I don't think these were players the Devils, these weren't the needs the Devils needed. The Devils needed another top six winger. The Devils needed a third line center. Look, you go back to last season, and you see where the Devils finished in terms of goal scoring. They finished 20th, and then a top 3 power play. You have a top 3 power play, and you finish 20th. You want to know where they finished 5-on-5? 26th. That shouldn't be happening when you have players, sign long-term, $8 million contracts with guys like Timo, Meier, Jesper, Bratt, Nico, Hischier, Jack Hughes. That shouldn't be happening. You shouldn't be finishing, bottom 10 in goal scoring. Those type of things can't happen. And if they do happen, you better fix it. And right now, it looks like Tom Fitzgerald did not fix it. And I think that was a question from all Devil fans. I think Devil fans, for the most part, seem to, and correct me if I'm wrong, weren't over the top with last offseason. I don't think a lot of us felt, they did what they needed to do. Now, they are in, trade rumors and things like that, but we saw the Devils in trade rumors last year, and what did they do? Not much. They weren't really that aggressive. They weren't very aggressive. It showed on the ice. They didn't look very good from, really February on. So when you're in these trade rumors and you have problems that you've been dealing with for 18 months now, and you're still not making moves, it definitely does, question, well, what is the Devils, what's the Devils' future with Tom Fitzgerald? Now, I do think, and I can see a couple of ways, I really don't see the situation where Sheldon Keefe gets fired before Tom Fitzgerald. Look, I don't think they're going to give Tom Fitzgerald another chance to hire another coach. I think Sheldon Keefe will be based a lot more on playoff success this year. I think if you had to go with which one's on the hotter seat right now, it's definitely Tom Fitzgerald. I don't think they're going to give Tom Fitzgerald another coach to go hire. Look, you look at the problems, and that's the issue that I have. It's not so much, this team losing right now. It's more so the problems that needed to be fixed, he has not fixed. Like, they've needed a top 6 goal scorer. They don't get it. They need a third line center. They don't get it. He kind of saw it a couple years ago when he went and traded for Tyler Toffoli. And then he moves off Tyler Toffoli. Well, who was Tyler Toffoli's replacement? These are the questions that I'd be asking. Is, maybe last year didn't go how you wanted it. Or honestly, the past 2 years. And the type of acquisitions they've made don't really feel like they're going to push the needle. It doesn't really feel like, bringing in guys like Connor Brown and Giddy Dodonov, yeah, they're good players, but I don't think it completely changes your lineup. I don't think it, you feel a ton. I don't think it does a huge thing when you have guys like, you need a third line center and another top 6 winger. When you need those type of things, you can add your Connor Browns and Giddy Dodonovs. It's not going to change enough. And not enough is going to change. When Jack Hughes went out last year, Devils struggled to score. Jack Hughes goes out this year, what's happening? Oh, Devils are struggling to score. Why is that? They didn't get a top 6 winger. They didn't get a third line center. These are things that should have been done and are important to get done, and Tom Fitzgerald didn't get them done. I was very crucial about his offseason. I wasn't a total fan of it. The year before, obviously, getting Brett Pesce, that was huge. But the best thing he did this offseason was, fixing up the defense. Just getting good coaching in there for the defense. It wasn't even a player. Brad Shaw, bringing in Brad Shaw was his best move this offseason. So it wasn't even a player. So I think that right now with Tom Fitzgerald, look, there's no official report that's out there right now saying that the seat's hot, that they've heard that, maybe Tom Fitzgerald is on his way out. But I do see you guys, I see you guys in the comments. I see you guys, talking about Tom Fitzgerald. And Tom Fitzgerald maybe didn't do enough this offseason. And I think you're starting to see the results. He didn't, I think, do what he should have done this offseason. And, I mean, now you're seeing it, and the Devils are struggling right now. 5-game losing streak. Look, they got to put an end to it. Whether they're going to make a trade or not, obviously, I do think the Devils do need to make a trade for a third-line center or a top 6 winger. But, yeah, it can't continue. They got to get out of it. Look, you can't point to injuries as an excuse because other teams are going to have injuries. Devils should have found a way around it. Tom Fitzgerald should have done something in the offseason. Didn't happen. Where do you sit, though, with Tom Fitzgerald? Do you think his job is safe? Do you want to see him move? Do you want to see him moved out? Let me know in the comments. Yeah, what do you guys think? I don't think I'm there yet with firing, but I definitely do question how the past 2 off seasons have gone, and just not going out and getting what the Devils need. So let me know in the comments, and I appreciate you guys for tuning in tonight.